Welcome to my very first Democratic primary tier list. We're going to be covering all the candidates, the ones that you don't know about and the ones that you cannot stop hearing from. So let's get ahead and do the first person. So right here, Kamala Harris is someone who is obviously going to run for president, and she very well may run in 2026 for California's governor seat. That's going to be vacated by the term-limited Gavin Newsom. Now, the thing about Kamala Harris to me is that while she's going to run for either or maybe both, the truth is that she's going to lose either election. What do I mean? Well, when it comes to the 2028 primary, she has the strongest name ID. What that means is that she has virtually everybody that can vote knowing who she is, which is valuable as heck. In fact, Michael Bloomberg, if you remember that he existed 4 years ago, he spent millions of dollars just for people to figure out who he was, and he was already New York mayor. So at that point, you got to say that she's saving a ton of money with name ID, which is important. However, that name ID is horrible. Hillary Clinton had a ton of name ID in 2016, and while she did win that primary, that election did not turn out so hot when it came to the general in November. My point being that most people that do know Kamala are not only hating her if they're right wing, but on the left wing, they're also disappointed by the fact that she lost to Donald Trump, and not only lost like how Kerry lost to Bush, or more importantly, Al Gore lost by a sliver to George Bush, but in fact, she lost literally every single swing state and lost the popular vote, which is something that people did not see coming aside from myself. And so she's terrible. She would have to run on the Biden administration record. That did not work out so well last time. And so honestly, she'd be an F tier candidate. She'd surely lose to JD Vance or whoever the Republican is at that point. Now, for the who's, let's put in some random dishonorable mentions. Dean Phillips was, I'll give him credit, the only Democrat that actually challenged Joe Biden in the 2024 primary. Now, did that go anywhere at all? No. And so that's why he's not going to even make it to the final cut here. Now, when it comes to some people that are also who's, but a little more notable, we have Amy Klobuchar. Now, Amy Klobuchar is a senator out of Minnesota, and she did not so hot. She was maybe the fifth most popular candidate in 2020. And when you're looking at the fifth most popular person from 8 years ago running again in 28, odds are that she's not going to do well, and people won't give her money just on that basis. She has the charisma of a substitute teacher that you don't like, the one that doesn't let you go on your phone, but the ones that are going to castigate you and maybe hit you with a ruler. She's terrible. Amy Klobuchar, no good. Now, people like Cory Booker, also ran in 2020. He's also Garbaggio. He's from the state of New Jersey, which is not a swing state, unless you're one of the people that think that Vance might flip it in 28, which he very well may. Cory Booker is a closeted homosexual, just me guessing, and he is a clown. He tried to appeal to Hispanics last election in 2020 by basically saying, speaking in Spanish as a black guy, which I think is very cringe. He's definitely doing the dollar store Obama bit, and it's very ludicrous. I don't think he's going to get anywhere. I mean, this guy's such a clown that I think he spent 25 hours filibustering a bill that got passed regardless of what he did. So he's an idiot, bar none. Just so stupid. Jamal Bowman, he lost a primary in the congressional aspect. He sucks. John Fetterman, interestingly enough, I'll give him some credit. John Fetterman is someone who is very popular among MAGA circles as being a reasonable moderate, a guy who is willing to work with both sides of the aisle. In fact, he is from the best state to be from, which is Pennsylvania, when it comes to the Keystone State being the biggest swing state in the electoral map. However, he's had a stroke and he sounds like it and he looks like it. He is very dysgenic. That's something that you have to account for, okay? Kennedy got a lot of what, like, think about it. Would Kennedy have beat Nixon in 1960 if he weren't the better looking guy? And so when it comes to Fetterman, the guy's butt ugly. I mean, what politician is worse looking? In fact, I'd rather look at Bernie Sanders. Now, maybe I'm a weirdo, but John Fetterman looks like a caveman and he acts like one. Him being a moderate doesn't really matter because when you get into the Dem primary, you're probably going to have to shift towards the left to get the votes of the progressives and the young folk. And so for that reason, I think he's really a D candidate. Again, he has some strengths. However, he's a terrible speaker, and I think that he does not have enough broad support to really have a good run. Jeff Jackson, I literally don't know who that is, and I do this for a living almost. Khanna is an interesting guy. He has the same politics as Bernie Sanders. However, he is Indian and like 40 years younger. Now, he has talked to right-wingers in the past, and I think that's a really good bona fide to have because it shows that you're willing to work with the other side. And he is a reasonable person in that he's not completely Trump deranged. However, he is just not that popular. Nobody really knows who he is outside of nerds and people in his district, I think, in California. And he's Indian. And honestly, and I'm kind of crazy for saying this, a lot of people don't have the balls to say it, but Indian Americans, dot not feather, are discriminated against. Now, I'm not saying that like a liberal, but I'm just saying most people would rather a white candidate or a Hispanic candidate or even a black candidate than an Indian. In fact, I believe Vivek Ramaswamy would have done a lot better in 24 had he been white. That's the truth of it. And that's not even touching his religious aspect, which I don't know anything about. But if he's not Christian, that also hurts. So I think he's an F candidate. Terrible. Jared Polis. Jared Polis, I don't know much about. He's a gay governor out of Colorado. He's not really in the national press, so his name ID is really low, and he's not a good-looking guy in particular. I mean, he looks like if who's the guy who married Meghan Markle? You know, just balding, kind of reddish hair. You don't like that, so he's an F. Not Ben, but Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania, one of the front runners, someone who was interviewed to become a VP candidate for the Kamala Harris campaign. And apparently, he was so charismatic that Harris was basically scared of getting outshined by her VP, which is a valid concern, I suppose. However, when you look at Josh Shapiro, he's a guy who has his problems. While he's a good speaker, anybody with the brain can identify the fact that he's just skinwalking as an Obama impressionist, basically. He's really just like a white Obama, the way he gesticulates and all of it. However, another caveat is that he's 5'6". Again, I'm the type of person that brings this sort of stuff up, the uncomfortable stuff, but it's true that height matters, okay? Now, recall the town hall debate that Hillary Clinton had against Donald Trump in 2016. You had a guy in Trump who was like 6'3", yet Hillary, who God knows how tall she was, 5'4" or whatever. And there was a power dynamic that's subtle. You had a 60-year-old lady in a pantsuit and then a businessman that's tall and also the same age, but again, looks more presidential. Josh Shapiro on the debate stage with the 6'2" JD Vance. I've met him before. He's really tall. It's not going to be a good look, okay? When you get up to the guy's shoulder and the other candidate is a lot taller, it's not going to look hot. And so that's going to be a diminutive aspect of his qualities as a candidate. But beside this also, Josh Shapiro, again, is very popular, is from a big state, which is fantastic. So he does have a ton of strengths. However, I think people might be rubbed the wrong way when people say that you are just copying Obama, makes him look like a poser. And again, the height is a problem. Another good thing for him, though, is that the arson done by a far leftist will make him look like a more sensible person and a martyr, so to speak. And so that's good for him. However, I don't think he'll beat I don't think he's that good of a candidate when you really look at it. And also, he has not really been under pressure. He ran against, I think, Doug Mastriano, who was a god-awful candidate in Pennsylvania, and otherwise has not really been pressed. And there's not been any opposition research that's been brought into the light on Josh Shapiro. So if he has a sordid past, we don't know about it yet, and so that could be a problem in the future. Gavin Newsom. Now, Gavin Newsom's interesting. Gavin Newsom is one of my pet favorite politicians. I might sound like a freak because I'm a MAGA conservative. However, Gavin Newsom is the consummate sociopath, and I kind of respect it. If you see Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, I think he grew up to be Gavin Newsom, actually. Now, Gavin Newsom is someone who is governor of California, presided over these LA fires, which were horrible to watch. And honestly, it's unforgivable, the sort of governorship he's had. In fact, he beat a recall effort in 2021, I believe, which you might say, well, he won that election, but it's California. So, I mean, yeah, obviously you'd win that. And the point being, though, is that this like recall is horrible optics when it comes to the presidential campaign in 28, because people can bring it up to say, like, the analogy would be that, oh, well, your wife tried to divorce you. Sure, you talked her out of it, but the fact she brought it up is really a wound in the marriage. And when it comes to his marriage to the people of California, they wanted out. A significant minority did, at least. And so Gavin Newsom has had a horrible tenure as governor. He is continually having these horrible press moments where people are saying that, hey, you're begging for funding for your Medicare that you're giving to illegals and all this other stuff. So anyway, he has a ton of scandals. Now, for some strengths, he has a lot of strong connections in the Democratic Party, obviously. He is also extremely intelligent and a great rhetorician and a good speaker. So I'd say he's even better than Josh Shapiro in that aspect. However, his resume is god-awful. Now, imagine if you gave a Harvard Law School graduate who's really smart and a good talker the resume of a McDonald's fry cook and then had him apply at a law firm. The guy would say, okay, I respect that you're good at smooth talking me, but you're getting thrown out because your application sucks. And so that's my point. If he were a good governor, then okay, he could be an S tier. But honestly, because of his record being so goddamn bad, kind of like Kamala, but even worse, I think that he's going to be a notch above Kamala, basically at C. Just too much baggage. Jon Ossoff. Jon Ossoff is another Obama skinwalker. Again, I hate that sort of thing. I mean, you see a lot of these people that were raised in the MAGA era, people in their 20s. They do the whole I'm the best. I'm going to copy Trump because I like him. He's my daddy. And people get rubbed the wrong way by that, you know? And so I view John Ossoff in the same light where he just copies Obama. And he's a little young for the position. He hasn't really pushed any legislation that anybody would know about. His name ID is not that high. And so he's really going to come off like a diet Pete Buttigieg, and they kind of look the same. Just that this one's marginally heterosexual, I suppose. So I'd say he's a C tier candidate. Joaquin Castro is a complete joke. If you saw 2020, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Shame to the Mexican race. Also, Julian Castro. Okay, I got those confused. They're like twin brothers. Nobody asked. Josh Stein. He's like the governor of North Carolina. Nobody knows who he is. Laura Kelly, I think governor of Kansas. Again, impressive. You won in Kansas of all places. However, nobody knows who you are, so it's not looking hot. J.B. Pritzker. He's the biggest candidate on the field. However, that didn't work out for Chris Christie. Now, did it? JB Pritzker is a very condescending, very just unlikable person. He's a person that mocks Trump for being a fake billionaire, and that like he's, oh, we need real billionaire politicians, which is just so tone deaf in a Democratic field. Now that brings up that his strength is going to be a lot of funding. He's going to have unlimited amount of money to get his messages out there in the Democratic primary, so he does have a chance to win. However, he's very dysgenic, and that's just obvious. And aside from that going against him, he's also going to have to deal with the fact that Illinois is not known as being a pleasant state to be at. I mean, it's known for Chicago of all places. And so it's not, he doesn't have a good resume from what I understand. So he really is an F tier candidate at that point. Michael Bennet, he ran in 2020. He sucks. He has like a weird lisp or something. He's a strange person. He's a punk. I don't like him. Nina Turner is a Bernie Sanders acolyte, but like of the worst kind. She's terrible, terrible. They should lock her up or something, dude. She's terrible. Elizabeth Warren, I believe she is about the same age as Donald Trump. She's going to be in her late 70s. That's not great. Elizabeth Warren already lost in 2020 on her own merits. I believe that she is not charismatic enough to win the presidency against a Republican, for one. And secondly, I don't think she really has the broad appeal to win over minorities, for example, young minority men. So I don't think she'd win the primary either. So I think she's terrible. Gretchen Whitmer. Now, Gretchen Whitmer is someone who basically tanked her own survivability in the primary by going to the Oval Office, like in a secret meeting with Trump, all to then have cameras in like a trap that Trump laid out for her, I assume. And then she hit her face with like a binder or a folder, which has got to be the most childish thing you could possibly do. I mean, this is like if you caught a 5-year-old stealing a cookie out of the jar and they try to hide themselves with a binder. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's weak. It's just plain weak. She did the worst of both worlds. You either don't meet with Trump or you just do it proudly. You don't half step it. I mean, it's embarrassing. And otherwise, she's from Michigan, which is a fantastic swing state to be from. And she is relatively popular, and she did win by a lot in 2022. But she also doesn't have that much charisma either. So I'll put her at a C, because on paper, she's really strong. However, that one moment, that gaffe at the White House, is something that I doubt people will forget. And even if they do forget it by 24 or 28, rather, I think enough people will bring it back up to where it's going to look really bad. Now, Raphael Warnock, again, he is a snake oil salesman, sort of like Democrat preacher. Not that he's not really that impressive electorally. He beat Herschel Walker, who was a terrible buffoon of a candidate, very low IQ, unfortunately, as good of a running back as he was like 40 years ago. So Raphael Warnock does not have what it takes. There we go. Okay, Governor Phil Murphy of Connecticut or New Jersey. I don't know much about him, so he's in the Who. Doubt he'd be that good. Roy Cooper is kind of what you want in a candidate. He's like a 60-year-old telegenic white guy from North Carolina, a swing state. Pretty popular as well. So he's pretty strong on that basis. However, as a speaker, he's not anything to write home about. One notch above Jeb Bush, to be honest. So at this point, I think that he'd be a D candidate because he just doesn't have anything special about him. Tim Walz, I should have started with him. Tim Walz, again, VP candidate for Kamala, is closeted homo. I mean, there's like half a dozen of them on the screen now. And anyway, the point being is that Tim Walz is someone whose charm really only appeals to some people, some hipsters. He is very disturbing to look at. I don't know. There's something very unlikable with him. When it comes to the debate stage, he's going to absolutely get torched. I mean, if the J.D. Vance VP debate was any indication, he's going to do terrible. So I think Tim Walz is done. I think running for VP is as close to the White House as he'll ever get. So I think he's an F candidate. He's terrible. Tammy Baldwin. Tammy Baldwin's in her 70s, which is not good. She's a senator out of Wisconsin, which is great. However, she doesn't have any recognition. Nobody out of Wisconsin, or rather out of Wisconsin, knows who she is really. And so I just say that she doesn't have much of a chance. If you're not already having your own base of support in the party, good luck trying to outshine 20 other people in the primary debate stage. Okay, I really doubt she's going to be able to do that. So she's really a D candidate. Mitch Landrieu, I don't know who you are. Wes Moore. Wes Moore is another person that you might see on paper as a strong candidate. He's in his 40s, I think, which a lot of people are wanting more youth in the party, definitely, after Trump and Biden anyway. And he is decently articulate. However, he's again another Obama skinwalker, which I guess the Democrats have a fetish for. So I guess that's up to them. But he's a Maryland governor. Name ID is not really there, so that's not great. Would he shine in a debate stage? Yeah, probably he could do that. But he doesn't have much of a legislative record that I can recall. So he's not that remarkable, to be honest. But I guess he could be a B because again he's a minority, young, and decent at talking. Ruben Gallego recently beat Carrie Lake for the Senate seat in Arizona. He's a white Hispanic. He sucks at debate, though. He has no charisma. He's got the charisma of like an 8-year-old that just wet the bed, okay? So he's not confident at all. I think he'd be a terrible candidate. I don't see him running. Okay, Mary Patola, I don't know who you are. I think she was from Alaska. Nobody cares. Kathy Hochul, you are very unpopular. You suck. Chris Murphy, he's trying to make the circuits, but like he's not that remarkable. I think he's a senator out of like New Jersey or Connecticut. I mean, who cares about those states electorally? Okay, AOC. AOC is interesting. Now, AOC is super popular. She's been on tour with Bernie Sanders, barnstorming the country with huge crowds, and she's pretty entertaining. That being said, I'd say AOC is the Cardi B of politics. She's flashy, entertaining, but very dumb. However, I guess Jasmine Crockett kind of just like took her whole like style, and now she's even dumber than AOC. However, AOC has been trying to maintain connections with the Pelosi wing of the party, and otherwise has been less radical as time goes on. And so when you do have overtures to the center, well, not the center, but the mainstream Democrats and the Bernie wing, then maybe you could get a good majority of the primary. However, you never know if she's even going to run in the first place in 28, considering that she'd only would have been a congresswoman for 10 years, but nothing else aside from that. But also, she's going to be maybe in her mid 40s by then, or early 40s. So that's a little young. I feel like she's just too stupid to actually win the primary. Remember, she's a congresswoman out of a safe blue seat, okay? So, I mean, frankly, her winning in 2018 was a fluke in and of itself. So I think she'd be a C candidate because I feel like she could surge to like 20% of the vote in a crowded field at the beginning, but I think she'd fizzle out. Kind of like Kamala, but better. So anyway, we're going to look at Mark Kelly, who's my senator out of Arizona. Mark Kelly is a great candidate on paper. He's a former astronaut, husband of Gabby Giffords, very popular. Name ID is decent. However, he's bald, kind of dysgenic. He's also pretty short. He cannot be an inch over 5'7". So that's going against him. And I don't find him to be charismatic in particular, and I think people will find that out pretty soon. I mean, Tim Walz beat him out in the VP considerations, so just keep that in mind. So I think he'd be a D candidate. So forgettable, but good on paper. Andy Beshear. Andy Beshear is someone who I find to be a strong candidate on paper. A lot of these guys are. He's a middle-aged white dude, which is pretty good for what the party needs now. And he is from, I think he's the governor of Kentucky, which again is really impressive that he won there. However, he is a Nepo baby. His father was a governor prior to him in Kentucky, so you could see how it was kind of served up on a hot plate for him. However, he's a decent speaker. I think he'd get along with a lot of the old, I wouldn't call them Dixiecrats, but the Reagan Democrats. I think he could make inroads with those people. I think the people that are anti-DEI, anti-woke might see him as a more reasonable, palatable person, even though in his heart of hearts, as a liberal out of Kentucky, he's probably to the left of what he lets on. Hence why he got elected in the first place. There's no way a Bernie Sanders gets elected in Kentucky if he's forward-facing. So I feel like Andy Beshear is a Trojan horse for leftism, obviously. But he is a pretty strong candidate in his own right, just because he is very credentialed. Now, Pete Buttigieg is someone who people are saying is Trump's worst nightmare. All these dorks on the internet are saying, oh, Pete Buttigieg would fillet Trump or Vance. And I got to tell you that you're just dead wrong. Now, while it is impressive that with not much of a resume, again, mayor of South Bend that nobody really knows about, from Indiana, he did run, I think, in third place in the 2020 primary, which in and of itself, again, is laudable. However, he is not really respected among the progressive wing of the party, and his platform in 2020 was forgettable. And I think it's very palpable and very obvious to anyone who listens to him for more than 2 minutes. They'll understand that he is somebody who woke up at 6 years old and decided to become president. If you look at his resume, it's all resume stuffing. You can just tell that he was angling for it. Now, that's okay. A lot of people are like that. They want to be president. However, to be so nakedly ambitious for it is disconcerting. I mean, it would be like if you were pining for a girl and you were just so obvious about it. A girl would might be like, "Oh, this is creepy." Like if you stumble onto this whole thing, then that's great. But it's kind of warding people off that you're so desperate for something. Like Donald Trump, for example, had his whole life before he ran for president. So people said he's an outsider. Wow, he's really taking a break from his billionaire lifestyle and his golden penthouse to come save the country. Pete Buttigieg cannot say the same, and none of his supporters would. He has nothing to do. He's literally unemployed now. His credential, like I said, is he is a Indiana former mayor as of 10 years ago. He ran for president for no good reason, did pretty well, still lost. And then, as a consolation prize for endorsing Biden, I believe, he ended up being the transportation secretary or something like that. And he did a pretty bad job. Now, the credential of being on the cabinet is frankly not enough to run for president, especially if you're running as a transportation secretary and not like Secretary of State or something, or Department of Defense secretary. So for that reason, I think that Pete Buttigieg is really a C candidate. He can do pretty well. I could see him leading the primary field at the beginning. But truth is that he's also gay. That's the biggest thing against him, honestly, is that not only is he a sociopath skinwalker, but he's also a homosexual, which, in 2028 is less bad than 2020 insofar as like people that are going to not vote for him because of that. However, I think it still undermines masculinity in such a way that is hard to explain. But when you're talking about Democrats that in 24 to Trump lost a lot of young Latino men and a lot of young black men, you'll realize that a white gay guy in his 40s is not going to appeal to the young black and Hispanic men. And I can say that as one because obviously it just undermines the masculinity of a person to a degree that's really disconcerting. And so I feel like he will distinctly not do well. In fact, if you look at 2020 in the primary, he did quite well in Iowa and New Hampshire, extremely white states. And then when you look at Nevada, he sucked. Okay, Hispanics. South Carolina, a black state, got destroyed. He got virtually no black support. Biden got all of it. Okay, so just think about it that way. So Pete Buttigieg, I think, will basically have an Achilles heel of his sexuality, along with the fact that he's a skinwalker, like half of the people on the screen are right now. So anyway, that is my Democratic primary tier list. Somebody might appear out of nowhere and run for president, and we might see them overtake all these other guys and end up in the S tier. We could see Stephen A. Smith declare a run. We don't know. However, I feel like Andy Beshear is probably the best choice as of recording this, and I feel like the Democrats are pretty hopeless in 2028. I mean, these guys are no Donald Trump. These people are no Obama. Heck, even Biden in his prime is better than the majority of these people. Okay, so anyways, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want more content like this. Comment down below what you thought about the tier list, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Adios.